and we will conduct our meeting. And at this point, I will call the meeting to order. Do we have any announcements or anything? I don't see any on the agenda. No? So we will go ahead and have our accreditation. This is what it is. Our Accreditation Board Policy Review Committee, which is now will be in order, and we will have Crystal. Since you are the person here, you can go ahead and we could get started right on with our agenda.
Sure. Trustee Brown, did you just want to ask for any public comment?
Right. Do we have any?
You just have to ask for it.
Yeah.
Do we have any public?
We have no public comment.
Well, thank you. So now we will proceed.
Okay, I'll go ahead and bring up the first one, which is Board Bylaw 2220, Committees of the Board. This was here last time, but there were some questions, and Trustee Martin had some changes that he had offered, and let me just bring that up for you first. So
Yeah, I think that would be helpful.
I think he just wanted to take out the ad hoc advisory stuff.
Well, he did. And the reason that I pulled it from the last agenda was that from where I sat, I think it changed the meaning of the policy, because when he emailed me, what he said was that he thought what the policy said was that board committees make decisions. And I responded and said, well, what they make are recommendations. Like they look at policies, they look at the accreditation report, they look at the budget, and they then make a recommendation to the full board for approval. But what he did in the last part of it, I think he had a concern about ad hoc advisory committees actually making decisions. But in taking out the ad hoc, the references to the ad hoc, it meant that if you all decided you wanted an ad hoc advisory committee, you couldn't have one because you don't have one in the policy.
Oh, okay.
So that's why I thought it should come back to this committee, because maybe you agree with him that you don't want to have an ad hoc advisory opportunity, but that was my impression, that it would change the meaning. Crystal, do you agree that it changes the meaning?
Yeah, I think it's important to understand that when you talk about ad hoc advisory committees, they usually are committees that you form to deal with one specific time for a very short period of time. So let's say, for example, the board wanted an ad hoc advisory committee on reopening discuss, and then the committee would go away because it's ad hoc. But
Right.
Erica's correct. If you take it out of here, then you've basically taken away your power to do that.
So I read Trustee Martin's comments differently.
Okay.
I did not, I didn't read, I think as I'm looking at these changes, so I'm assuming he's the one who did this redlining, correct?
Yeah, he sent the redlining this way.
Yeah. Is that he is concerned that any committee we have does not really have the authority to act on behalf of the board. All committees still have to, whether they're advisory or they're standing committees, have to bring their recommendations and their findings back to the board as a whole for a vote. So that's how I read this.
Yeah, I thought he was just wordsmithing and wanted to close it up because everything has to go to the board for approval. But
Right.
Either
Right.
way.
And the way, without his redlining, it does make it look like only the advisory committees don't have the power to act and they have to bring it back. But it's really all committees have to bring back the recommendations to the entire board.
Well, then I guess,
agree with
okay, so then I guess the question would be, should there then be a separate description of what a board ad hoc committee is?
Yes, I think there should be. And I don't know if it was, so maybe it was where we went back and we described what the ad hoc committees are with, so it's with the exception of advisory committees composed of. I don't know if it was this policy, but when we talk about these ad hoc committees, So they don't have to adhere to the Brown Act because they're not regularly scheduled. They're not in our bylaws that they're formed standing committees, and they're only formed for a certain purpose. So I think, so I do think that that's an important distinction to make.
Could you just say board, like in the second paragraph, board committees, including ad hoc advisory committees are composed, da, 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 da. Would that do it?
So would we ever have a board committee that is more than the quorum?
No, there could never be one that it's more than the quorum.
Well then, so the way that Tony is recommending seems like it would satisfy then all of it.
Okay, so let me just, going back to what Crystal said about the ad hoc committee that is formed to take care of a particular problem. They would represent the board. Is that what I understood, Crystal? So if that is the case, then where is this going to be reflected on the policy? If we form a committee just to address an issue, and it's an ad hoc committee, are we giving those committee members the opportunity to represent or speak on behalf of the board? That's really my question.
I think what you probably want to do is keep the language in the third paragraph, but just state that board subcommittees and ad hoc advisory committees are advisory only. Erica?
So,
and have no authority or power to act on behalf of the board. So findings or recommendations from an ad hoc committee or board subcommittee shall be reported to the board for consideration.
Yeah, I think that satisfies, and that actually satisfies what
So you
John, I
really
think,
just
was trying to
establish-
accomplish.
yeah,
Yeah, I
That
think
way-
I agree with that. So just, we
Yeah.
agreed that everything goes to the board.
Erica,
yeah.
David?
I think that, yeah, I think that your recommendation, the way to do that, Crystal, is good. I think the only thing, and the only question I have is, this then pertains also to the legislative committee. So if the legislative committee wants to take action, like let's say we're under pressure to sign off on a letter of support for a piece of legislation or something, then that means that the legislative committee can't in and of itself decide that that there will be a letter of support, as long as we all understand that also pertains to that too.
Yeah, I think there is some difference, not in the committee assignment, but Erica, I think you do have the power to sign off from the district, right? To say that the district will support this. Yeah. So as long as you have that, I don't think that we have ever asked for the board legislative to pass a supportive legislation without having it go to the whole board. And I do think that would be difficult for us to do.
Mm-hmm.
So the other question I have is on paragraph 2. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So board committees that are composed solely of less than a quorum of the members of the board that are advisory. So why don't we just say, since no board committees will ever be comprised of a quorum of the members of the board, why don't we just say board committees are not, or just say that they are not, they are less than a quorum of the members and are advisory and are not required to comply with the Brown Act. So we will
Because
never have a board committee that has a quorum of the board.
But I think that the distinction is that if it's an ad hoc advisory board committee, it does not have to meet the Brown Act, but this meeting does, because this is a standing committee. Am I correct, Crystal, in my understanding?
Yeah,
So that's
this
why-
one is a standing committee, right?
Right.
Right.
This is,
So So what we probably need to say in the second paragraph is that board committees that are composed solely of less than a quorum of members of the board that are ad hoc advisory are not required to comply with the board, with the Brown Act. Because this standing committee is required to follow the Brown Act.
Can I ask something?
Okay.
Yes.
So for Brown Act, it's my understanding that there are any voting members that are discussing something that will eventually come onto the agenda to a vote. I think it's my understanding that that discussion has to comply with Brown Act.
Mm-hmm.
And so wouldn't ad hoc committees also fall under that sort of requirement?
So an example of an ad hoc committee is, let's say that the board said, so with everything happening with COVID, we'd like there to be an ad hoc committee of the board to just look at how the college is dealing with the COVID crisis. That's not a decision-making body. It's just we're interested in hearing a little bit more and having a regular report from the college. Or like when I was at the LACCD, the board created an ad hoc advisory committee on revamping Title IX requirements. It wasn't that they were going to weigh in and make decisions. It was that they wanted to hear updates on how the district was doing that. So I completely agree with the distinction you're making, David, but ad hoc advisory committees rarely are they don't make decisions. They usually hear updates and provide input to the district on something they're working on.
Okay.
I do agree with David, though. I think, I find this to be difficult to clearly divide this responsibility because, so for example, I'm thinking of the DEI committees that we have, and this is one of the things I want to talk to Jim about, because we have 4 trustees that are on each one of the 4 subgroups. And so we're going to be talking about recommendations that we would be making and bringing before the boards. And I'm thinking about how we do that. So, I mean, if you just say that these committees are only for information only, what if the COVID discussion committee that in the example that you used, Erica, is also looking at the reopening issues? I mean, then that becomes almost decision-making.
Well, it depends on what you think the charge of it is, because reopening issues, it's not, reopening is operational. So unless there was something related to something that required a board decision, it would be me talking to you about how we're approaching it. It wouldn't be me saying, will you give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down on how you're going to reopen? You know what I mean? It's more information sharing. And in terms of the statewide DEI, I did ask Mary to add a reporting out item after board committee report outs. There'll be another item on the agenda starting in August for statewide committee report outs from board members. So those of you who are serving on DEI committees can report out on what's being discussed.
So what I would say is that we probably, would be my humble opinion, that we come to the understanding that all committees are solely advisory committees, period. Because some committees are able to, I don't think there is no such thing where they're going to make decisions. So let's just make it very clear that it's all advisory committees.
So
Well, but whether or not you call them advisory, I think the issue was whether or not they have to comply with the Brown Act.
Oh, so we moved on. Okay.
No, well, we're on the second paragraph. So that was the
Yeah.
issue that David brought up that I
see.
I
Okay.
also find is a little bit confusing. I just find it feels a little muddy to me. I can see where committees we have might easily move into discussion about what could we do or what should we do and
That's
should
true.
we talk to the board as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, maybe they all ought to be Brown. I don't know. I hate to make this so messy, but I think we should be clear because I can see this being problematic possibly in the future.
Okay.
I could be
I don't know.
wrong. I think they're all Brown Act. Anything that deals with.
Yeah, I think it's less messy to just say they're all Brown acted.
Yeah.
Well, you can say that in the second paragraph. You could say board committees that are not composed solely of less than a quorum of members of the board are required to comply with the Brown Act. You can still determine that you want to do that.
Yeah, but now you're saying it's the quorum that makes it different as opposed to that they're only advisory. See, the way this reads, it says if they're advisory, that they're not. So we're already saying all committees are comprised of less than a quorum. But then we go on to say that if they're advisory, then they don't have to comply with the Brown Act. And I think that's where it's messy.
And I'm gonna switch what I'm sharing with you and bring up a Word document. So if you guys want to do the edits, we can do that right now. Is that all right?
Yeah, that would be great.
Because this is a
Sure.
PDF document. So
Let me just
just so you
say
don't get
something.
lost
May I say something?
Yes.
I'm having some bad signals here on my internet, so in case I freeze out, just carry on. Because
Okay. Thank
happens
you.
every day at about this
Uh,
time.
really?
So Berlinda, what you might do is go on to the telephone with your audio.
That's what I'll do.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so this is what it looks like now, and I can edit this document. So I'm going to make a suggestion here that we put a period here and we cross this part out because I think that makes the first paragraph kind of confusing.
Uh-huh.
And then you say any committee established by board action shall comply with the requirements of the Brown Act and with these policies regarding open meetings. And then technically, if you wanted to, you could eliminate the second paragraph.
That totally works for me.
Yeah, that would make it a lot easier.
So I did that. And then you can say board ad hoc advisory committees that are solely advisory have no authority or power. But then you guys are going to have to decide what you want to do with that last paragraph.
So I think the recommendations that you came up with, where we said that they're all advisory and they all have to go, they all have to go to the board. Their recommendations all have to go to the whole board as
So
a whole.
then just take out ad hoc. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. All right.
Ooh, that was a hard one.
Okay.
How's that?
That looks good to me.
That looks good. Okay.
Yeah, I agree. That looks good.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Great.
Excellent.
Thank you.
All right. Stop my share and go on to 2350 speakers. Let me find that for you.
So I have a question on this one, Berlinda.
Go ahead.
So
Okay.
this in item number 6 under this talks about speakers should not speak for more than 5 minutes.
Thought it was
So
three.
our was that your question also, Tony?
Yeah.
Yeah. So because when the board clerk reads it off, we always say 3
Yeah,
minutes.
that's why I highlighted it.
Yeah.
Okay, I figured that's why you highlighted it.
Yeah.
So do you want to stay with the 3 minutes? Because we can
Yes.
adjust this.
Yes.
I think 3 minutes. Yeah, I think 3 minutes.
Yeah.
You know,
Some
unless
committees
the
have
board chair gives them more, you know, decides to give them more, and we have done that before. John has done that, others have done that.
So 3 minutes, it should reflect 3 minutes, but I do have a question. On
Mhm.
occasions when we have like special, I don't want to call it events, but let's say someone died or someone
Yeah.
came to give, you know, say words and with letters to commend someone that was very useful to the college. How and what would be the procedure? Because I was the clerk more than one time when folks came in and they had compelling things that they wanted to say about the individual. And I felt really bad and really truthfully, sometimes I didn't interrupt them. What should we do?
It's actually covered in the end. It says here at the end of the 5 minutes, if the speaker desires additional time, she may request it of the board.
Okay, but while we are, so this should be done ahead of time? Or that's what I was having a problem. Should it be done ahead of time if they know they're going to go over 3 minutes? Or should they start their long laundry of stuff and then have to be interrupted, which I think that's kind of rude. So what do you think we should do?
So, you know, the problem is if you let some speak longer and you have a whole line and then others want to speak longer, you know, I find it difficult. So I want to be fair. I think everybody should have about the same amount of time, but I understand what you're saying, Berlinda, that there have been occasions where someone has been, you know, very emotional and we do want to finish hearing what they have to say. And normally we, you know, I think, I don't know if it should be up to the board clerk to say, okay, you can go longer or you don't have to go longer. I think that should be up to the board chair to make that decision. And I thought we said that somewhere in here. Is that in here, Crystal?
What's that?
That the board chair could deem,
It says the speaker can request additional time.
But
and the chair shall attempt to let's see.
I read it and understand that, but what I am saying is, for instance, I think when I don't know who died and someone and they were elaborating on the person's life, which was good to PCC and what have you. Should we make arrangements ahead of time or just, sir, you need to start? That's where I'm having a problem.
So I think, you know, when those kinds of things happen, Alex and I are usually aware that that's happening. So what we could do is we could move those speakers to introductions and recognitions rather than as public speakers, because public speakers to non-agenda items, it's usually I'm upset about this, I'm upset about that. You know, it's like, it's a different thing, but if we don't want to cut speakers off, and we want to, especially if we've invited them to speak, which in some cases we have invited them, then we probably need to move them to the recognitions and introductions.
There you go.
So the incident that Berlinda is talking about, I was the board clerk at that time, and it was Alan Lamson who was making who asked if he could make to speak about someone who had passed away that he felt, you know, needed to be recognized. And Alan and I are friends.
Yeah.
So he called me and he asked me, and I said, well, you can do it a couple of ways. I said, you can make a public comment, or you can ask for the item to be put on the agenda. So it could be longer. So you can do this. So Alan chose to make a public comment. And when his 3 minutes were up, you know, I did signal him that his 3 minutes were up. But, you know, certainly the board group said, you know, we would like to go ahead and extend more time to the board, to this speaker. But instead we had a trustee who made a big deal of it and said that this was so insulting and blah, blah, blah. And then he never talked to her again, but unfortunately he never talked to her anyway. So it didn't make any difference, but.
But that was just one thing. I don't remember that incident, but the incident, what I'm referring to is just recently. I think we had someone that had passed away, and it was an African-American man that came, and he was giving the whole story about all the stuff that he had done for the college. And I think we should give him time. So I agree with Erica, maybe we should move those kind of scenarios to a different, so we can allow them to speak and say what they need to say without interruption. I think that's a great idea.
I like that too, but how will you know that ahead of time? I mean, what if they didn't contact you? How will you, would Alex be looking at what they're going to talk about ahead of time and then move them to a different spot?
Erica?
Alex, do you want to weigh in on this?
Yes, I'm sorry. I had to step away to get the door. I'm sorry. What's the topic?
So when a speaker come and
Yep.
want to elaborate on the life of maybe of a professor or someone in the athletic field, I think you had someone that did that
Yep.
recently. What
Yes,
I am suggesting is that we should not have to interrupt them, because normally it's longer than 3 minutes. So Erica is suggesting that maybe we could move them to another non-agenda item or whatever it is, where you put them where they can speak freely and finish without us having to interrupt them.
Moving them to the introductions and recognition section rather than
I think that's perfect.
comment.
Yeah, but what I'm questioning is how will you know that ahead of time so that you can do that?
They will contact us. We will actually arrange it. You know, we will know that the person has passed away, and I will reach out to someone who knows the person to come and make remarks. So it's very coordinated. We'll be able to do that, no problem.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, as long as we can coordinate it.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, because I feel bad having to
Yeah,
hit that button. It's not good.
no, it's hard.
Okay, very good.
Hey, anything else on this?
That's all I had. Good.
All
I'll
right.
move it forward to the full board.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay. All right then. Where am I?
You are board bylaw 2360.
2360 it is.
I didn't have any comments on this. I thought this was fine.
2360, I had none. 2360 minutes, I had none either. No recommended changes.
So are we good?
We lost Trustee Brown for a second there.
I'm fine.
Unless trustee. Yes.
Yep.
We still lost Trustee Brown. Do you want to keep moving forward, or do you want to wait for her to come
Well,
back?
so I did have a comment on 2350. Sorry to go back on this. Sorry, I should have asked this. You know, on number 7, we talk about the members of the board may ask questions of a speaker. This is very different than what we have cautioned people on and our members in the past. And I think it has caused some issues.
I'm glad you said that. I do not believe I'm sorry, I just noticed that I had made a comment. I think that should be removed, because I have to say that this is highly problematic, because you wind up getting yourself into potentially talking about items that are not on the agenda. And even as it says, as to items not on the agenda, the Brown Act permits the board to comment thereon, but the effect of comments should not be such as to constitute commitment to any action. I don't know how to safeguard all of you from making comments that commit you to action. So if I were in your shoes, I would not want this in the policy.
So Erica, would you recommend keeping the first sentence, but striking the second sentence?
I would strike the entire item.
Okay.
I would strike all of 7, because otherwise you have the potential of winding up in a back and forth conversation with a public speaker. And especially if it's on non-agenda items, it's one thing one way to change this is that it is okay for the board and the superintendent president to ask questions to a speaker's remark if it's an item that is on the agenda. My concern is, how do you avoid going into bad territory, or starting to make commitments if it's on a non-agenda topic?
So are you suggesting that it says members of the board and superintendent president may ask questions of a speaker's remarks on agenda items, but not allow them to question the speaker?
So that what Crystal said then is, if you strike the second part of number 7, so the first part of 7 is okay because it's on the agenda. The second part of 7 is not. Yeah. Okay.
So yes, I would strike the second sentence, because I think that if you don't, then it can get out of hand.
Yeah, I was surprised to see that. So I was going to question that, because that has always been something we have warned new trustees about, current trustees, etc.
Yeah, but in the case where a speaker wants to wait and make public comment when the item comes up on the agenda because it's on the agenda, then sure, there can be a dialogue, but not for a non-agenda item.
Do you maybe want to change that first sentence to read, members? Go ahead.
To be honest with you, I really would like the whole thing gone, because in the past we have never allowed that interaction. And
no, we have, Berlinda.
Oh, we've had a board chair who's now on the state board always respond.
So again, I would much rather that be gone. That would be my personal opinion. I don't think we should engage in that, because it could lead to one way or another. And everyone, you ask one question and then another person said, well, you had so-and-so ask the question. I think it's slippery slope, my opinion.
Well, how would the trustees be able to ask questions then? If a speaker brings up an issue, how would they be able to ask any questions? So just direct it to the superintendent?
Yes.
So then maybe that's what we should say. If the board members have questions pertaining to comments from the speaker, they are to direct their questions to the superintendent. Because I have seen, and I've been wondering about this. So I don't know, Berlinda and Tony and David, maybe you guys can weigh in on this. I do think it feels a little off to me when we have trustees asking questions to the vice president and asking that they answer the questions, because really our questions should be directed to the superintendent, I think, and then they can redirect it to one of their staff members as opposed to us grilling the staff members.
Let me talk as an elected official, and certainly you would never put something, even on city council, it's a policy. It's not a policy, but it's something you don't do. If somebody gets up and talks from the public, you let them talk. Unless they attack me, then I'm going to respond. But I think, a trustee, a city council person has the right, if they want to speak. But I would not invite them to do that. So that's why I would just get rid of that last sentence.
What last sentence?
As to items not on the agenda, the board permits.
What I'm proposing is that the entire 7 be gone, personally. That's my opinion.
Except the trustees do have an opportunity they should have an opportunity to ask questions.
And we always do, but not during a meeting. If I get up and I speak, right? I'm a public person coming, I'm speaking, and then Linda is going to ask the superintendent to respond to what I'm saying. Is that what I'm understanding?
So if we have someone who talks about something that's already on the agenda, we're going to be talking about the agenda item anyway.
Okay.
So I think the question is, should the trustees be asking those people, the public, who is coming to comment on that, should we be asking them questions? Should we be asking the superintendent the question? Or should we be asking the staff that's in that operation the questions? I think that that we should be asking the superintendent the questions, any questions we have on that agenda item.
Well, during the meeting, we should be doing that, or I mean. we
Yeah,
have
I mean, these
questions.
are agenda items. These are
Okay.
items on the
So
agenda.
we have a member that comes with, maybe just understand this. So we have a public member that comes and they have a yellow slip talking about an item on the agenda. Okay, and it's posted, and now, so the process would be for me to direct that person's inquiry to Dr. Andrew Jonas? Or what, tell me, what are we talking
So
about?
what I would say is something like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example. So let's say the speaker says that this pottery class was offered, and everybody enrolled in it, and then all of a sudden, without any notice, and we're talking about curriculum, and without any notice, they decided to just end this, and now the staff member doesn't have a job, and blah blah blah. I mean, I think it's on the agenda. I think it is okay for the trustees to ask the superintendent, how was this discussed with the trust? Was this discussed with your faculty? How did this process go? And I think that normally Erica's been pretty good about just jumping in and saying, I'd like to add some information for the trustees, information on this. But, if the trustees, if it wasn't covered and the trustees do have some questions, it's an agenda item. I think they should be able to ask it. I just don't know if we should be having trustees ask the speaker to elaborate on any of the information, or ask the superintendent, is this, if this class was cut without notice, what was the process?
Mhm.
So would this be an opportunity, let's say, going back to exactly what you said, using that scenario. So after that person rant and did all what they have to do, so we got to turn to Erica and ask her to respond. Now, I am sure by the time this subject came to the board, there have been a lot of dialogue between, I would say, whomever, the faculty or whomever, and maybe it could be contentious. So now Erica is responding to clarifying, if you please. And then now, is that going to lead to this unwanted discussion that's what I'm talking about.
It's an agenda item anyway. So
I know,
the trustees will have an opportunity to ask any questions.
But
So I think we're mixing this up. I think what we're mixing up is, do the trustees have an opportunity to ask a question on an agenda item? I think the answer is yes, we do. The
okay,
question I have is, the way this reads is, should the trustees be asking the speaker from the public any questions? Or should we just be directing our questions to the superintendent? Or should we be, and in some cases that we've seen, we direct our questions to the staff?
So
I think we should just direct it to the superintendent and let them decide who's going to answer the question.
But doesn't the
Okay,
Brown
what,
Act say,
madam?
doesn't the Brown Act say that a trustee or a city council person can address questions? That's the problem. As an elected official, you have the right to speak. We have a policy on the board that we speak as one body, but a trustee, if a newspaper person calls them, they have the right to say what they want.
Yeah.
So I think that, and then I'll get to Crystal. So I think there are two ways to look at this. One way is that if somebody, again, focusing only on items that are on the agenda,
Okay.
if a person gets that, like, let's say that there's a program discontinuance on the agenda and somebody says they want to speak to that. And so the time comes when we're talking about that program discontinuance, and an individual gets up and says, I can't believe that, this program is going away. There are tons of students who still want this program. We're all gonna not be able to graduate because we don't have this program. I think the bigger issue is, if a trustee wanted to ask that speaker a question, or if that speaker said, and, you know, we've complained to the administration and the administration, you know, still is discontinuing the class, the danger in having the trustee ask me as the superintendent, well, so is this true? Did you actually study it? Then it creates a situation where I then might have to point out that incorrect information is being shared with the board. I don't want to do that in a public setting. Like, I don't want to be put in a position of saying I have a different perspective than what the speaker just said, because then it turns into a he said, she said kind of thing. So,
You know, I'm almost at the point that maybe Berlinda's right, just eliminate 7. And
because you all can always ask, you can always direct questions to me without engaging the speaker. You can always say, you know, at the end of the 3 minutes or whatever, okay, thank you for that. And then turn to me and say, you know, Dr. Androgenis, by the next board meeting, I'd like a report about what the speaker talked about. And then I would make that report. But if you engage with them, then it could potentially put me in a position of having to say that the speaker is not telling the truth. And I don't want to do that.
So the issue though for me is there's nothing that prohibits a trustee from asking the speaker a question. That's why I was trying to clarify what the role, who the trustee then directs their questions to. So in this, they could ask the speaker a question. So eliminate this, they could still ask the speaker a question. There's nothing that says that they can't do that, but that's not the guideline.
So again, I fully agree with what Dr. Adrijonis just mentioned, and that's what I've been trying to articulate. Yeah, we all have rights and we all can do things, but in order to conduct a meeting, and I don't want to be into that, and I wouldn't want to put her into that position. We've done well, and I think most of the board members know that we don't engage into that. And now that we have 2 new board members, we need to be very careful of what we put out there, because some would listen and some would take this and run with it. So I'm done.
Yeah, so you can eliminate it, but it's not going to prevent people from asking whoever the question.
It's never going to it's not going to prevent somebody from asking.
Okay, well then, as long as we're not saying you can't do it, so you're just taking it out, so we're silent on whether or not you can ask the speaker a question or whoever.
We're not giving permission.
We're not giving permission. So if we remove 7, we're doing neither. We're not giving, but we're not prohibiting it.
Okay, so we're just silent on it. Okay.
Which is a better place to be legally. All right.
Good.
So we'll take that out.
All right.
Okay, minutes.
Coming right up.
So I didn't have anything on the minutes.
Me either.
And I have no recommended changes.
Good.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. The next one is recording.
Yeah, I didn't have anything on recording.
yeah, that's fine.
Wait, I did. As soon as I find it, I'll tell you what it is.
Yeah, it was just to remove the enact administrative procedures too, because that goes without saying.
Yeah.
Is directed to ensure that any such recording.
Well, and there aren't any.
Right.
Yeah. So it would just change it. It's right here. I'm sorry. I can highlight it for you. I just deleted this remark right here. Because we don't have administrative procedures and you're still directing the superintendent present to ensure that any such recordings are maintained, but without administrative procedures because there are none.
Okay.
Good.
All right, sounds good.
Okay. David? Okay.
Are you there, David?
Okay, the next one is superintendent president selection. So let me pull that up for you.
Yeah, so this is one that we're bringing, that I asked to be on the agenda.
You did.
So Berlinda, okay for me to address my issue on it?
Let me address mine.
Okay, address your issue.
Okay, so actually, I read this over and I had some discussion with it because Trustee Walk originally had stated some concerns. So we talked about it. So last night, it just came to me and says, well, you know, no matter who, and the one we were referring to, which one, Linda?
So it's item number 13.
No, number 13. The
Mhm.
issue was where we brought in, okay, here we go, the screening committee, and then we forward three board members are representing us. And I guess it's going to be okay because no matter which board district member is represented, there's going to always be someone that feels that they didn't get the right treatment. So I understand. So I said, you know, that's fine. So I don't have no problem with it.
Yeah, so my issue on this is we had agreed, so this was, so after I talked to Berlinda, so we had agreed that that we would have the selection committees involved in interviews. Before they were only doing paper screening.
Yeah.
So one of the things that came up last year when Raj was, we were going out for the superintendent search when we hired Erica, Raj had said the faculty had complained that there were too many community representatives. And so they wanted fewer community representatives. At first, I think they only wanted 2. And then we said, okay, you know, we would do 3. But, you know, after having seen the process the last time, I do feel that all 7 community members should have been forwarded for the interview committee. I think that each of us has different communities that we represent. And I know that the faculty's view is, well, we're the ones who have to work with the superintendent. So, you know, we know better than anyone who should be, what their attributes should be. But I also feel that the community should have say, we are serving our communities, you know, and I think that just whittling it down to 3 community representatives, I don't think was sufficient. I think we should have allowed all 7 community members to go on to do the interview.
Well, I'm going to weigh in and tell you as a candidate that having
There you go.
21 people in the room for this interview would have been insane. It was bad enough with everybody around the table. So to subject people to 21 people around the table is too much, number one. And number two, it provides a it means that a third of the decision making goes to the outside community members who have absolutely no idea what a president actually does on the campus. I mean, this is your board bylaw, but I got to tell you, if you go forward with this, I'll be happy that I don't have to apply for a job here.
And
This is
let me
crazy.
let me
To have
just
a third-
clarify,
So
No, go ahead,
we
Crystal.
discussed.
it would be 19.
Yes.
It would only be 19 people,
That's right. It's 19. So it goes
Yeah.
from 15 to 19.
but still a lot.
That's still,
Well, 15 is a lot too. I mean, we could have 1 management representative. I do think the community representatives do have some idea of what we would want in a superintendent.
but
I
they
don't think that they're as
do
clueless as we think they are.
So basically, we had this conversation and I agree that 19 is way too many. But the reality is that there may be ways that they could reduce the representation, the number of people that they have per unit, you know. So after listening to Linda and after hearing what the person that I brought in, one of her issues If I'm just going to do the paperwork, I'm not interested. So when you select someone to come in, to go through all the hundreds of apps or whatever they are, and then they just leave. I've heard 2 different persons told me the same thing. So if I'm not going to at least see or interview who I selected, then you've wasted my time. So I am sure there's got to be ways that we could keep the 7 members of the board and work with the college to reduce the number of people that they send per. Why are you shaking your head, Missy?
Because if you look at the if you look at the people represented, you're basically going to go and say to the management association potentially, well, I mean, yeah, you have to work with the president, but we only need one of you.
Okay.
And I mean, we only need one student. I mean, outside community members have more say in the selection of the president than the students of the college. I mean, again, I don't have a dog in this fight because I'm hired now.
Okay, and you can't go for the next 10 years, so I won't have to worry about it.
19 people, with a third of them from the outside, I think is really too much. But again, I don't have a dog in the fight because I have the job.
Can I make a suggestion?
Go ahead.
If you were going to go to 19, would it be possible to maybe divide them into smaller groups and have panel interviews of, say, maybe 4 or 5 people who interview the candidate for an hour, and then another 4 or 5 interview that candidate for an hour?
That's the direction we're headed.
Instead of 19 at once?
Yeah, and that's the direction we're headed for administrative interviews and potentially faculty interviews as well, all interviews. Breaking it down into smaller panels who interview each of the candidates according to particular competency areas. So if you adopted that approach, then it would work. But because then there'd be smaller panels and each candidate would meet with like 4 of the panels over a 4-hour period, and there'd be a lot of exposure. But a candidate with 19 people around a table.
Yeah, I agree with the president. I could have a word. I agree with the president on this. One of the things is this was a work that was put together with the academic senate. I hate to change things without having them have input in this.
Yeah.
And so I'm not unhappy with this, the way things are right now. The only thing that I can't get my notes here, but that so I forgot what's on there, is that the board has the right to ask for all of the, to ask for the whole group of candidates, the applications, to go through it themselves if they don't like some of the candidates on there. That's what I want the committees to know. That the board has the right to call up all the applications.
Yeah, but I really think that should be a last resort. I mean, I think overriding, these search committees, I think it should be a last resort. What I think, I think either breaking down, I'm not totally sure about breaking down into panels, because I think that people will want to see all the candidates. I don't think adding 4 more people is a big deal, but and I'm sorry, Erica, that you feel that way, but I don't. And I think that all 7 of our representatives should have been there. But I think that what I would say is, 7 could come down to the top 3 votes, and that's it. And then let the 7 of them only submit 3 votes.
Well, I think Tony makes a good point, and that is that you all negotiated this with the academic senate. So I think you have to have a conversation with them if you want to add those additional 4 representatives from the community. I think you have to have we have to invite Matt Hennis into this, because
that's fine.
That means that there's more than twice the number of faculty on this committee.
More community members than faculty.
So may I suggest
But
something? Yes.
Well, let me just clarify one thing. When I was discussing the smaller groups of panels, each one of those panels would see all of the
All of
candidates.
them.
That's how we do it. Is
Oh,
that
I see.
So there'd be 4 people that would interview all the candidates, and another 4 would interview, and another 4. And then you might be able to break up these 7 community representatives into groups with the other folks, so they could understand what like a faculty member or a student is looking for in the superintendent president.
Yeah, so you're still doing it sort of, it's a holistic approach, but you're still doing, yeah, you're just subgrouping them, which I think is also okay. I don't have a problem having a conversation with the academic senate. So I was on the negotiating team when Tony was the president, when we did all of this. And at first it sounded okay, that was reasonable. But as I saw the process and I heard sort of the feedback from some of the other community members, I really do strongly feel that all 7 community members should be involved in at least seeing the candidates.
Okay, so would be my suggestion. We take this to the full board, right? And see what the other board members think about this. And then after, if we decide that this is the way we want to go, if that's the order that we should do it, then we will meet with the oh, come on, you know, with the academic senate.
If I were you, I would have the conversation with the faculty first, because if you take it to the full board, then it appears that it is a fait accompli, and you're coming to the faculty after the fact to say, this is what the whole board wants, and it will feel like maybe not a good faith.
You're right. So basically you're saying that we, the subcommittee, can talk to the academic senate first, right? And
yeah.
Then their base and how they feel, then we'll go back to the board.
Well, I don't know if you take it to the board and we discuss it in closed session, because this is the hiring of the president.
But you're not hiring the president right now.
Well, we're talking about the process though of hiring the president.
I know, but what I would say is I would have to research whether or not that's an appropriate topic for closed session, because you're not currently hiring a president. So you don't have a need to have this closed session.
Yeah.
So the problem I see with taking it to the academic senate first without some discussion with the board is maybe the board as a whole will say, look, we don't care, you know, just do three, and we don't care whether or not it's the other 4 representatives are there. So then it becomes a non-issue. But taking it to the academic senate and saying, you know, without really knowing whether or not the board is supportive of this, I'm not sure is the best idea.
So what we will do is, I would suggest that we try to get a meeting with the Senate. All 3 of us talk about it, see what they suggest, and then after that, then we'll see where we go. Because at least we know how they feel about it. This is not a pressing issue. So let's put this on hold.
Unless there's something I don't know about. It's not a pressing issue.
No, it's not a pressing issue. And that's one of the reasons I said that, you know, I didn't feel it was urgent, but I also didn't want it to go off the table, because I think it's important that we discuss it.
Yeah. So why don't we try that?
Okie dokie.
Yes?
Yeah, fine.
Yes? Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, this is a hot one today.
The next, okay, sorry. Let me bring up 2610, which is presentation of initial bargaining proposals. Hang on, I should
Okay.
26.
I don't have an issue with this.
Well, I have a question. You know, I'm always full of questions.
I gotta find it first.
Yeah, please.
I don't know where it went. Hang on, let me look over here. 2610.
Oh, here it is.
Can you see it yet?
Yeah, I have it.
Well, I'm waiting to see it on the board.
Me too.
So I could ask.
What did I do with it?
Because I can do
Okay.
both either.
Let me try again. I just pulled it up again. Why can't I find it? I have it. Oh, here it is. Okay,
Thank you.
there we go. Sorry about that. Okay, go ahead.
So what I'm reading this and, okay, so the presentation of the initial collective bargain. Now, is this just okay, it says the board shall schedule public hearing. That's number 2, right?
Mhm.
I was never aware of what we do. That's what I'm saying. I don't know where the board come in with this. How does the board schedule a public hearing?
If you read to the end of the item where it says the public hearing may be held at a regular meeting or at a special meeting, when we do this, you'll see in the board agenda that it actually, we start a public hearing about receiving the,
Okay,
or
okay,
declaring the initial bargaining
okay,
unit.
that I remember.
And then people have an opportunity to comment, like you could comment, oh, this looks like an interesting proposal, or you can say nothing. And then the board chair closes the public hearing and we go on to the next item.
Okay, no, I'm familiar
Hearing
with
happen
that.
within the context of a regular board meeting.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And I checked with Vice President Bob Blazinski, and he said this was fine as is.
Okay,
He
cool.
thought it was right on target.
All righty,
Everybody good?
we're good.
And that puts us on to 2725, board member compensation.
Good.
Yeah, I don't have any issue.
Yeah, I had no recommended changes for this one either. Anybody?
We're good.
Okay. Trustee Fellow, yes. Trustee Ramiro,
I'm fine.
okay.
I still have questions why this all came about years ago, but I'm fine.
The compensation?
Huh?
The compensation?
Yeah.
Why we shouldn't get compensated?
It used to be $840.
Oops.
And then
Yeah,
I really don't understand the whole thing now that some board members get their insurance, medical insurance, in addition to
Well-
400.
well, I think we all get medical insurance, or you can all sign up for it, right?
Right.
Yeah. Everybody can.
Yeah. So you don't think that we should
don't
get
get
medical insurance?
Personally, in elected positions like this, no, but that's the way
That's
it is.
okay. I don't take mine out, so I don't have a dog in the
It is,
fight.
but, I just never understood. And nobody ever gave me a good answer what happened. It was sudden. And
I'm not sure what you're talking about. Are you talking
I
about?
just wanna know, I've never been told why we went to 400 from 840.
Oh, well, we were never getting 800 when I got on the board.
Yes, we
so-
were.
So we got 800 if you decided not to take out insurance.
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
then, because
Oh,
everyone
okay.
else had
I got it.
insurance,
I got it.
we didn't have the same benefit that the others were
Yeah,
getting.
okay, I remember that. Okay. All right, next. Now I remember that, yeah.
Okay.
Uh,
David,
Is there an explanation as to why the student trustee does get different compensation from the other members?
I have no idea.
I have no idea. We can look into the history of that. I have no idea how that came to be.
Yes,
What
we
did
can.
the student trustee get?
They get a $3,000 scholarship, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
this is that whole
You know,
issue that's coming up with the student vote and the student compensation.
Yeah.
So I will say, just in discussion at the state level, different districts do have different compensation formulas. some districts, so what I had heard, David, from the student senate, and they have always talked about this, and I've had an issue with the league on how they talk about this, is the students have always said that equitable compensation is what they were fighting for, not equal compensation. So for example, so the issues I brought up to other districts is you'll see one district where a lot of their elected board members will have a number of committee meetings. So I would say LACCD is one of those where they have like all-day marathons, and the students aren't expected to give up that much time. So they get compensated very differently, and they get a much higher compensation than their students. But we have other districts where they're a little more not as cash ready, and the trustees then have given up having any stipend whatsoever. But it doesn't feel fair, I think, to ask the student trustees to give up their stipend, because, and it's not, so they don't really call it a stipend. So for example, we call it a scholarship for the student trustees. So it's one of the issues I have asked the league to look at in terms of what we call equitable compensation as opposed to equal compensation. So kind of, if a district depends on how much time you're putting in, and we're not expecting the student trustees to be in every single committee and all of these other things, maybe it's equitable then that their involvement then, I guess, is reflected in something like a scholarship. But how they came up with that number, I don't know. But that's kind of the gist of the equity versus equal.
So may I say something? I know we're running over time. It's after 2. Is it okay for us to continue, or is everybody's okay to continue?
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, good. All right, carry on.
So we are on, do you want me to bring back the student trustees
Yeah.
compensation
Let's bring
at a
that
future
back.
meeting?
So, yeah, let's bring that back, and we'll do some
Okay.
research and see how it was
Okay.
set.
Okay.
Okay. Yep. Let's do that. Okay, so we are on to board education 2740. I only was recommending down here, you might want to consider more about the tour since we have a few more facilities now.
Yeah,
Right,
so that was my
right,
question on
right,
this, is
right.
why we were just limiting it to the 2 campuses. So I don't know how many more campuses we'd ever add, but maybe we should just say all
All locations.
campuses. Yeah, all
I think we should
locations.
just say this orientation should include a tour of all
All
locations.
locations.
Yeah.
I also have a question about the mentors. Who is mentoring our current students and our trustees?
Well, I believe the board president decides or assigns mentors.
Okay, okay, all right, because I'm not sure who they are.
And then our student services folks work with our student trustee and our ASB president.
Okay, all right.
But I think we have always encouraged any of our trustees, the students, as well as our regular trustees, to feel free to reach out
Mhm.
to anyone, if they have questions.
Yeah. Well, and I've started having the president of the student body as well as the student trustee come to executive committee once a month to talk about what's happening. We did that back in July. We'll do it again every month.
That's
Right.
great, Erica. Yeah,
Right,
I think that's
Susan?
really great.
Good. Everybody's good with this? I made the change.
Yep, moving on.
Okay. The next one is 2745 board self-evaluation.
Yeah, I'm okay. Did we ever discuss our self-evaluation?
I don't have any recommended changes, so it's up to you.
You did discuss it. You discussed it at your January retreat, I believe.
Did we?
And then I don't know. I'll have to go back. I'm having a brain cramp.
So
Okay.
I don't think we summarized the issues and discussed it after we got the results back. So we issued an instrument, but I don't think we ever went back and, I don't know, I don't recall it, but
I don't recall either, but. we'll-
Yeah, I'll go back. I thought you talked about it during your retreat in January, but I will go back and take a look.
yeah, we talked about about submitting the instrument to everyone. And I think we did that part, but we didn't go back and
Okay,
summarize the results of that.
okay. I'll double check that.
But the process is fine, so I'm okay with the policy.
Yeah, I'm okay also.
Okay. We're on the 2760 resolutions by the board and action on legal issues.
I didn't have any issues on this.
Fine.
Anybody else? Everybody good?
All good.
Okay. Next one is 2780 advisory representatives.
Well, I didn't have any issues, but I didn't understand this.
Yeah, I say that a lot. No, just kidding. Let me pull it
What
up.
about 2770?
Oh, sorry, I forgot 2770.
Relations?
Let me pull that one out. Let me go back.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that's the one you were talking about. Which one were you talking about?
I moved too fast. I'm gonna pull up 2770.
2770, that's the one.
Oh,
you need.
okay. Well, I didn't
Okay.
understand either 2770 or 2780.
Okay. Let me find 2770 first. Community relations.
So what is this really saying?
Yeah.
I didn't understand the purpose of this.
Yep. I didn't make it. I just thought you should
I'm not
review
blaming you, Crystal.
No.
It kind of looks like the board having responsibility for giving out information like to their districts, maybe. I don't know.
Well, where did it come from?
Well, it was first passed in 1994, so
Oh,
none
Lord.
of you were on the board. We
Exactly.
don't know.
I mean, is this required that we have this board bylaw? Maybe we should just delete it.
Yeah.
I don't think so because it doesn't have any legal references associated with it, just board minutes. So I don't think
Yeah.
it's legally
I don't think
required
it's
to have it.
required.
I can do a little more research on it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see any purpose for this bylaw at all.
Yeah. Well, especially the part that says shall assist in the interpretation of the
Oh,
educational
Lord, no.
throughout the district.
Yeah, yeah, this was just baffling to me.
Yeah. So I wouldn't go with that.
So I can move this forward with complete strike throughs and then you can vote as a board to get rid of it.
Yeah.
How about
Yeah.
if we just get rid of it, period?
Yeah, I would find out if there was any real reason for us to have this, if anyone else has it. I mean, it doesn't look like there's a legal requirement.
Yeah, but you all have to agree to strike
Okay.
it.
All
Yeah,
right.
okay.
So I'll do a little work to see if there's any reason that you should have it before we move it forward. But if I can't find any, I'll ask that it be put on with all strike throughs.
Okay.
And then you guys just have to remember that that's what you decided, that you didn't think it was of any use.
Yeah, just list our names and you can say that these were the trustees who got rid of
I wouldn't do that.
this. They can hunt us down 20 years from now.
Okay. All right, and now we're going to 2780 advisory representatives.
So same question. I have no idea what the purpose of this is.
Again, not required. There's no legal references.
Yeah, how is this any different than anyone that we we would hire as an advisory representative? I mean, it could be an architect advisor, or it could be building advisor. I mean, this should not just be the legal advisor.
Yeah.
Well, you know what's interesting? This didn't make any sense to me either, because the board may contract for the services of an attorney as an employee. So it basically is saying that the board can choose to hire its own attorney to serve as its employee, but that doesn't make any sense because you only have one employee, me.
Actually, we had in the
You had
past
attorney.
had an attorney.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but it was
good.
the superintendent who hired that attorney. So
Oh.
we
Yeah,
had
that was a college
in-house legal. Yeah, it's an in-house legal counsel.
Okay.
Well-
Okay, well, go ahead.
It's odd.
What, Erica? It's on?
If there's no legal reason to have this, like you can have an attorney whether you have this board bylaw or not.
I don't,
You need it.
One less.
yeah, let's handle that the same. Strike through and bring it to the board.
Okay.
I'll research this one too as well.
Yeah.
To make sure there's nothing that makes you keep it.
Yep.
All right. Hey, good work. You just powered through those last few. And now we're on to the 2020 PCC Institutional Self-Evaluation Report. Am I right? And so yesterday, you folks received the full document. And I did that on purpose so that you didn't think that you had to have it read by today, because you don't.
And I did read it all night. I stayed up.
I bet you did.
Yeah. It looks very nice, I have to say.
So I just wanna, can you see my screen?
It's starting. There you go.
Yes.
Okay. So I just wanted to give you a little timeline of where we are right now in the process. And as you can see, you got the full ICER today. So, or you got it yesterday. We will discuss it again, but I wanted you to notice that it technically doesn't go to the full board until November. But
Okay.
our hope is by giving it to this subcommittee at this point, you will have plenty of time to review it, talk to us, make any comments or suggestions, let us know what you think, so that while it is going through the governance process on the college campus, which includes classified senate, academic senate, associated students, that instead of you getting it last, you're actually getting it on the front end with time for this subcommittee to have input into it before it goes to the full board, with the hope that when it goes to the full board, you will be advocates for the document.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Everybody good?
Okay.
Okay, great, super. Have a conversation, I guess, about how we develop board policies so that we don't run into any problems. And I think what we were going to talk about here was, we understand that sometimes it feels like by the time a board policy gets to this committee, it's already gone through shared governance, or it gets to the full board and you can't make changes. So we want to figure out some way to not have that happen and let you have more input on the front end as we're moving through the policy process. Erica, did you want to speak on this?
Yeah, I just thought, since we've had a couple of policies, some difficulties once they've reached the board, I thought it would be good for Crystal to review the steps that were identified and created. I don't know how long ago. Looks like
2015.
2015, for how policies move through the process. And then let's talk about how we might, if there are anything we want to do to tweak the process so that you feel more confident about policies that go to the board for final approval, because we just want to avoid it appearing to be that you feel powerless to make recommendations to policies. But, so we need more of a discussion on the front end, because really once they've gone through the whole shared governance process, if there's a recommended change at the point that the board is going to approve it, in most cases, it means that it needs to start over again. So we've got to try to figure out how to get the board input in during the process.
Is this on a page in this document, or this is just a
Actually,
PowerPoint?
this is actually a web, I pulled this from our policy and procedure webpage on the PCC website. So it is there. It's a little pop
Okay.
out, but it is there.
Okay, okay.
Now, just to be clear, this is board policies. So this precludes board bylaws, because I only bring board bylaws, chapter 2, chapter 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7.
So it's actually the step 3, I guess, where we need to flesh this out, and it's recommended back to the board. And so it needs to, this is where I guess you suggested going in with the first reading and a second reading before it gets submitted to the board. So somewhere, yeah, it's that third step, because by the time it's brought to the board policies group, this accreditation group, it already has been gone through the shared governance process. So that's where the issues have been.
Right. So the question is, do you want to see the policies before they go out to the shared governance group, so we get a feel of what you're thinking is? And then when it goes through the shared governance, we can have that reflected before it comes back.
I mean, I
So I
don't know why
think
couldn't
it's
it,
somewhere in here,
Yes.
because that we would want to talk to this group right here before we get to step 3.
Yes.
oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah, that's true. Except, we won't see the wording, I guess, or the issues that come up. And it seems like that's where, even though it's the board's action is really at that first or second step. So we're the ones who decide, okay, there needs to be a policy. Then it gets brought before shared governance. We won't hear the flesh out of the issues or see some of that in the wording until maybe it's too late. And I think that is a problem.
Well, I think part of it, though, is that if we bring these to you first and we have a thorough discussion of them, then Crystal and I and Alex know what your perspective is on it. So as it's going through the process, if it appears it's going in a completely different direction, then we know to come back and say, okay, these policies, this particular policy is about to go to the academic senate, but this is what's been brought up before then. What's your perspective on it?
Yeah, the only issue I have with that is I trust you and Crystal to be able to do that. I'm not sure that will always happen if you are not still in the seats that you're in now. I certainly remember when the mission statement was discussed with the board, and that was probably like 3 years before it actually got brought as the final baked cake to the board.
Mm-hmm.
But we never, and though many of us, and I submitted some recommendations, but I don't know that it got articulated in the way I had hoped to see it on the mission statement. And I think that was kind of an issue for me. It's hard to see unless you really kind of see it fleshing out throughout the system.
Well, the mission statement, I think, when we next review it, we need to have the board's input earlier in the process, and it is that's a little bit more delicate than some of these policies, because the mission statement, when it gets down to wordsmithing, we have to find the common ground, right? The problem is doing that at the end and trying to figure out what the best solution is, what the majority will vote for, basically. But when it comes to, like, you all are the policy committee. And so, like, when you have seen policies, when you've approved them, and then they go to the full board for approval, at that point in time, you know, you've made the recommendation as the policy committee, as the people who have really invested in looking at all of these things about that the board should approve them. So in some ways, when one of your colleagues wants to make a bunch of or several changes to the policy, that's where you as the policy committee can say, well, we've really looked at this closely and this is what we forwarded to you for approval. You know what I mean? Like, so we have to figure out how to get that voice in there at a time when we can make changes if necessary. But really, by the time it gets to the Board of Trustees for full approval, it's gone through, it should have gone through you maybe twice and through shared governance. And it's kind of baked at that point.
So really, I am looking at all the steps that you go through to be able to, before the policy actually comes to the board. And I could appreciate the work that everyone does. I know that we're talking about this because of one particular policy, one that I can remember, one particular policy, which actually was a very important policy, which was that of the mission statement of the college. But I cannot really say that we need to go through all of this because of one particular policies. Do we have any other policy that we could see that created a problem other than a comma here and a period there? Because I think this is going to be just disrupting the whole process. I mean, there
was another policy that came through about 4 or 5 months ago, and one of the trustees suggested some language change that when it was before the full board for approval, that number one, it had already gone through the whole share governance process. And number two, in that moment in time, the language that was suggested actually changed the meaning of the policy. So I think that's.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there will be some things. So I know that you had recommended a first reading, a second reading. Where would you say that happens so that once it gets to step 3, then it goes for a first reading to step 4? Is that what you're looking at? Or it goes up to step 5 as the first reading?
Well, you know, I'm wondering if there isn't, because I think there are some that you are going to want to look closer at than others, and clearly that's what we've seen.
Yeah, absolutely.
So maybe what we want to do is provide this subcommittee with a list of the ones that I have going up for review. And if you look at that list and you say to me, we want to look at these first and get an idea of where we're going before I send them out. I think there are some that are not, there's just not going to be as much concern about.
Exactly.
But I could provide you with a list of all of them that I have, you know, that I have an expectation are going through shared governance for review or development. And you could look at them on the front end before it gets too far into the process.
So here's my question. Why couldn't that whole list just be given to the board and say, look, these are going to be scheduled for the board subcommittee review. If you have issues, send it back to the board subcommittee.
Well, you certainly could do that. I mean, if that's how you as the subcommittee want to get their perspective beforehand, you could do that.
I'm not sure it's going to be helpful, but we could.
Yeah, I would recommend we do that.
Well, I guess I would just kind of want you to think about how that might play out in a meeting, because you know, I could say these are, you know, 10 or 15 board policies that are going to undergo review this year. Are you going to have an open meeting discussion about all 10 or 15?
No, but I think that, well, we do have an open meeting on it because the whole board has to approve it. So
No.
I think the list can be sent to the whole board and they can go back to the the chair of the accreditation bylaws policies subcommittee and say, you know, here's some issues that we want you to look at.
So would you want me to send the list and the policy so that they knew what the policy said? So just send them exactly a packet.
I
of
don't know. I
everything.
think the list is fine. I mean, we are putting the policies up on board doc, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, they're there.
Okay, so they
So
can
that's
look them
good.
up.
That's good.
They can look them up. They have access.
Okay.
All
Great.
to avoid the last minute changes. I think that probably would do well. That would.
Okay,
I can.
do that. We just want to, that is the interest here. We want to make sure that the board feels like it has the opportunity it needs to look at these policies and to not feel like they're backed into a corner in the 11th hour.
Yeah, and I mean, I can even think of, you know, where we have gone through certain policies and we haven't flagged certain things, but all of a sudden it goes before the full board and maybe a trustee will
Mhm.
flag some things and it makes sense. I mean, if they're specious kinds of changes, okay, maybe we'll let it go. But, you know, where there are things that do seem like they do make sense, it seems reasonable to at least get our input from all of our colleagues.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's
Okay.
totally doable.
You can do it. All righty.
Trustee Brown?
Yes, so I think that's it, right?
Yep,
Are we
we're
done?
on. You have meeting schedule and proposed future addenda items.
Okay. Let's see, where's my agenda?
So, Crystal, could we go back to that slide that has the accreditation
Oh, sure, sorry.
schedule? Because I think that will probably drive their next meeting. They might want to meet to talk about the accreditation, the ICER.
Sure. It doesn't go, we're not expecting it to go to the full board until November 10th. So anytime in between there, if you'd like to have a meeting where you discuss the ICER, I'm here for you.
Okay,
Yeah, Berlinda, we should probably do that, don't you think?
sounds good. Let's see, September,
September or October, probably September. That would give us maybe the third week of September would be good. Crystal and I are doing an accreditation visit to Cuesta virtually the last week of September. So maybe we could do something in the third week of September, and then that would give us time before it goes to College Council in October, and then for the full board in November.
okay, so in September, we're gonna have a meeting with the entire board or just?
No,
the committee?
call it this committee.
Subcommittee.
Okay, well, let's do something, whatever works.
Okay.
I'm free. That's
We'll
all
do
I have
a
is
doodle
time.
poll. We'll do a doodle poll for September.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Mhm.
And I'm just going to ask permission to bring Dr. Thea Alvarado to that meeting. She's the faculty
Please.
accreditation. Yeah.
Please do, yes.
Granted.
Okay, so we're going to get a poll for September meeting and future agenda meetings. What do we have?
Well, we have the ICER and then we have the the student trustee compensation. And you still want to talk about the superintendent president's election?
We could do that after. We're not in a hurry for that because
Okay.
we need to schedule time with the academic senate. So let's defer that for a little down the line.
Okay,
Okay? So I think that's it, right?
fine.
So
All right,
at this
good.
point, any other thoughts? Then we're done. So
Okay.
this meeting is now adjourned. Thank you, David.
Great. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Miss
Bye.
Lisa. Thank you, Tony. Bye.
Bye.
Adios.